These are jigs I think every woodworker should have in their shop, and they are so simple to make. Almost anybody can do it, including this new small table saw sled, 4 small saws, and this massive workbench that levels everything up. Let's go. The very first jig I tried to make in my shop, well, it was actually not even in the shop yet, was a table saw sled, and I failed miserably. It wound up in the burn pile because I didn't have a simple way to make it. I was just getting started and I didn't know what I needed to know. So in this video, I'm going to teach you a very simple way to make a very simple while wildly functional table saw sled for these smaller saws, and then some other jigs that are really going to help you in your woodworking journey. And some of these could literally change the game for you. I know they did me. If you'd like to check out any of these tools, supplies, plans, anything like that, I'll link those in the description and the pinned comment, and of course on that shop button right here on YouTube if available. What's great about all of these jigs is there's plans available to help you make all of them. I'll link them in the description. One thing you quickly realize when you get into woodworking is things are very expensive, and that includes jointers. Now a jointer basically takes the edge of a board for edge jointing and makes it straight and flat. So if you're doing, say, a tabletop or even cutting boards, you need all of those boards to be nice and straight when they come together, or you'll have a gap. And that's what a jointer does. It removes that gap, especially for edge jointing. There's also face jointing where you take the warp or the bows out of boards and things like that. But a jointer is very expensive. When I started, I didn't have the money to go buy a jointer, and I worked several years without one. One of the first things I did was try a level trick to joint the edge of boards. It works okay, but it's not perfect. If you want perfectly straight edges, so you're making tabletops, cutting boards, you want those perfectly aligned boards where there's no seams and it just looks like butter, you got to have a jointing jig if you don't have a jointer. And this is a very simple one right here. I've showed this many times on the channel, but it's very easy to make. You need a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. You're going to route some grooves in it with some dovetail bits. Now all of these jigs I'm going to show you today use one dovetail bit from Micro Jig. This thing literally changed my shop because of all the stuff I've been able to do with it, and I'm going to show you all of those. There's plans available for this jig on my website, but very simple to make. You're just going to route some dovetail grooves in this thing. There's 2 inches from each side all the way down the length of the board. 3/8 inch deep is what you want to set that router bit. And then about 4 inches from each end. It's not rocket science. You're just putting some grooves in there and then kind of equally space those out there. Literally, you don't need the plans. You could just go route this up. And then from there, you're just going to clamp your board to it and run it through your saw. This one edge is going to ride against your fence on your table saw, and the other edge where your board will stick over, you'll be able to cut the edge of that board off. And essentially what that does is if the board was bowed, it's not going to matter because it's not actually riding against the fence. It's just setting free in the air, being held by this. You're going to be able to cut the edge of that and make it perfectly straight every time. You could also use this as a high fence or a tapering sled. Very simple to make, very cheap to make. This could be one of the most useful jigs that you're going to get in a small shop. We'll go over that in a minute. But this small table saw sled could level up your small table saw easily. First, you need a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. See the theme here? All you need is a piece that's about 20, I think mine was 24 by 20, so less than half a sheet. You want to cut a piece of plywood 20 inches by 20 inches square. For the fence, we're going to use 2 3-inch pieces of our plywood. You're going to rip 2 3-inch pieces and you're going to glue those together. You just set that to the side while you work on your sled. Now for this sled, I'm going to use the Match Fit Grid Router Guide. This is one of the easiest ways to do a lot of this stuff. This actually comes with the router bits you're going to need, which means you'll get the relief bit and the dovetail bit and the grid router guide all in one package. You can get 1/4 inch collet or 1/2 inch depending on your router. If you don't know what that is, if you have a small router, a little trim router like this, it's probably 1/4. If you have the big plunge routers or 2 1/4 horsepower, they probably have a 1/2 inch. Whichever one of those you want. From there, all you have to do is put the handle on and you're going to put your router base on there. This will clamp down to most any router base out there. Then just insert the relief bit. Now there's instructions there to tell you how deep that bit needs to be. 8.5 millimeters is where you need to be. Now I put mine down with double stick tape to keep it from moving, but you need to secure this little piece in some way, however you need to do that. From there, you're just going to use this grid router guide. There's a fence or on the outside edge of that that's going to ride on the outside edge of your plywood, and you're going to route that groove. Then, when that's done, you're going to use this little guide. There's a little fence right here that's going to set into that groove, and it's going to let you space every one of your cuts 4 inches apart, exactly, 4 inches on center. You're just going to keep doing that until you get all the way across. And then you're going to do the perpendicular lines the exact same way, except for you're going to push it away from you. Once that's done, install that dovetail bit. It needs to be 3/8 inch deep. That's one of the magic tricks here with the Match Fit dovetail bit. Put it 3/8 inch deep and it routes these grooves that all of their accessories go in. And then for the dovetail grooves, you're just going to go in reverse order from what you did with the relief bit. So just from left to right, if you went right to left, that sort of thing. That way you can use the relief bit grooves to cut for all of your dovetail grooves. This only took me a few minutes, maybe 5, maybe less than 10 minutes to do this entire pattern here. Now you can use several things to go in your miter slot for this sled. In the past, I've used just hardwood. That works perfectly fine. You could also use UHMW plastic. That works. Some people like that. But Microjig has a zero play guide that you can use that's very simple to install. They even have a template you can use that shows you exactly where to drill the holes. All you're drilling is 3 3/4 inch holes, and then there's some step down holes, 1/2 to 1/4 inch, where you're going to actually attach this to your router sled. That's what I did here. What's great about this is it expands and contracts so it fits in a lot of different miter slots. So if you have kind of odd sized, check their website to make sure it fits into yours, but it should fit most table saws, at least most modern table saws. Once that's on there, I want to put a block on the very back. That's just going to keep you from cutting that thing in half, because it will happen. Ask me how I know. And then on the back side, we're going to put 1 screw in one side of this fence. Doesn't really matter what side, you just pick the side you like. Put that screw in there. Make sure you countersink that screw. After you put a screw on one end, I like to clamp the other one end down. Make your cut, and then take a square that you trust against the edge of the blade. Make sure it's not riding on the teeth, and square that fence up to the blade. This is the easiest way to do it. Now you can get super technical, and I have before. My other crosscut sled, I use the 5-cut method, and that dials it into the tens of thousandths of an inch. For the most part, you don't need it that accurate. Most people don't. If you're building like fine furniture and stuff like that, yeah, probably. But if you can square it up to the blade with a square you trust, it's going to be close, and it's going to be close enough for most people. It's fine, especially on a small saw. Once you get it square, just tighten that clamp down so that fence can't move, flip it over, put some more screws in there across there, make sure they're countersunk, your fence is square, you're ready to start cutting. I have the square. You could do a few things to make this a little bit different or a little better, upscaled. You could actually route a dovetail groove down the face of this fence, and that'll allow you to put stop blocks and things like that using that dovetail or match fit system. Then of course you could also build a fence to do miters on. That's how I did with my big crosscut sled. This will allow you to cut miters up to most any degree that you can think of, and it works really good. You can just use a square or a angle finder or anything like that to set the degree that you want to cut, and then you can get to work. Before we get to this, I transformed my entire work table in less than an hour. I have wanted to do this for so long. But I didn't have a way to do it until they come out with this grid router guide. This made it easy, because now I've got a 4x4 pattern all the way across my work surface. Now what does that do for me? Well, for one, I can basically set up jigs or stops. So if I'm going to be assembling things like a 90-degree angle over and over and over, if I'm building tables or benches or anything like that, I can set these 2 stops up with this fence locked into place, and I always have a place to set these 2 boards. I know it's perfectly 90, and I can assemble it or attach those 2 together just like that. There's also these little pop stops that are really cool, basically a little more low profile, and if you set something on top of them, they mash out of the way. But when there's nothing on top of them, they're kind of poking up there, and you can use that to reference both sides of your board. So you're able to square things up that way as well. And then what I use it for the most is to be able to clamp things down flat on my surface while I sand it or do routing or anything like that. And that's where this really levels up, especially with the low profile clamping kit that they have. Because using those 2 fences, I can also use this little cam clamp and just lock the piece into place very simply. I can do my sanding and grab the next piece. Or they even have this little ramp clamp that as you tighten it, it pushes more force into the board, into the fences, so everything stays locked in as well. All of those come with that low profile kit. So that's one of the cool things. And of course, there's different clamp options, including this quick clamp, ratchet clamps, auto positioning clamps if you need to clamp odd things like round or half round stuff. Like, there's endless options to clamp things down now because of this pattern, and I can do it anywhere on this 4 by 8 table. What's great about this is you don't have to do a 4 by 8 table. You can do whatever size you want. So if you have a 2 by 4 work table, you can do it on that. If you have a Boris centipede that extends out and you put a piece of plywood on top of it, you can grid route on the top of one of those and use that as your work surface, take it in and out of your shop, space saving, and still have ultimate work holding. One of the main reasons that I wanted this top was, if you've ever seen me use track saws, especially when I cut the walnut, the 2-inch piece of walnut, it's always overhanging the edge of my workbench. And I've never had a solid way of clamping that. I've always kind of just rigged it up to where they were clamped down. But I would love to be able to just clamp it to the table from this side, and I couldn't do that. I always have to clamp to the outside edge. This allows me to clamp on the inside of the table while I work on the outside of the board. That's one of the main reasons I wanted this, And I do that a lot. If I'm cutting sheet goods, I need to overhang it off the workbench. This is going to allow me to clamp the sheet good down while also working on the outside edge. This will be a game changer in my shop, and I think it would be in most people's shop if they took advantage of it. If you're extremely limited on space, a single 2x10 or 2x12 could level up your shop because it would give you ultimate clamping in a small package. I built this a few years ago, still using the same dovetail bit. It's extremely easy to make, and it's still using all of that clamping option. What this does is give you a way to do the flat clamping like I showed you earlier, but it also gives you vertical clamping capability. So if you need to work on the edge of the board or the end of the board, you could do that with this. And because this is so versatile, you can clamp it to basically anything. Tailgates, if you so chose, your wife's dining table, if you don't get caught. I mean, there's lots of places you can clamp this to and make a work surface out of it. So if you're very limited on space, this might be the perfect option for you. But even with all of my space, I say all of my 2-car garage space, I still use this quite regularly just to clamp things vertically. There's plans available and a whole build video on this one if you want to check that out. MicroJig themselves has free plans available for a few cool little jigs. If you go to their website and click on project plans and then free project plans, and then scroll down a little bit, what you're going to see is the utility sled. I think this is really genius because it just uses one of their little handles. This handle is the exact same handle that comes on the gripper. And so you know it's a good quality handle. And then it'll actually has hardware to go into that dovetail slot. What that's going to allow you to do is create a mini table saw sled. So even smaller than this one, you're not going to have as much support left and right unless you build a longer fence, but it will allow you to make a small little crosscut sled. And you could also do miters with it. These plans are free. This will be a very simple project. It's also made out of plywood. They do have a 360 sled that is similar to this one, but it doesn't have a fence permanently attached. It just has a floating fence that you would square up every time or set the miter of every time. So it depends on how you would use it. I like having a fence attached because most of my cross cuts are 90 degrees. So having one that's already set is much faster. I could just set it on the saw, get to work. But if you want one with a floating fence, that option's available as well. I never thought when I bought my first dovetail bit from MicroJig that it would change the shop like this and be so useful. I have used these over the years time and time again to either build the jigs or even use the jigs that were built with this bit. I think it's a genius system, and I think it's one of those that are just a must-have in a shop. You should probably check them out, especially this new grid router guide. I love my new Workbench now. It's awesome. You got to check out my safer crosscut sled. Click in that box right there. Click in the box, get you the big old virtual fist pump. Or if you want more jigs, watch that video. Yep.